Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and today Wizards of the Coast released their 4 deck lists to the Commander 2017 Tribal decks. They'll be coming out August 25th, and we're going to do a video series exploring each one of these deck lists. This is part 1 of the 4, where we look at Feline Ferocity. Of course, this is the Cat Tribal deck. So we're going to look at the 17 brand new cards that are included in this deck. There are 17 cards in each of these that have never been printed before. We'll do a deep dive into those cards. I'll give you my thoughts on each of them. Then after that, we'll look at the rest of the deck list and round out all the reprints that are included in each of these decks. At the end of the video, I'll also give you a quick review and my final thoughts. Now, quickly before we get started, if you check out the description below, you'll find a couple ways to help support us, one of which is our Amazon affiliate store. If you make any purchases there, a small percentage will come back to help support the channel. And secondly, you'll find our Patreon page linked below as well. With that out of the way, let's get into the cards. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to start off with those foil commanders. Each of these products has 3 premium foil cards in them. They're legendary creatures that can be used as commanders. They meet the color identity requirements for the deck. And the first one we'll look at is the featured commander. And that's Arabo, Roar of the World. Okay, so this is your commander if you want to go big. You want some tall creatures that can get in and just trample over your opponent. If you like that kind of gameplay, this is probably the commander for you in this particular instance. Now, all these featured commanders have an eminence mechanic. In this case, Arabo actually can give another target cat at the beginning of your combat +3/+3 till end of turn. But what's interesting about this mechanic is it works when he's on the battlefield, but it also works when he's in the command zone. So you are getting a bonus prior to even casting this for the first time, and that's actually pretty sweet. Now, that second ability is all about just making that creature perhaps even bigger, or other creatures as well, because the ability doesn't tap or anything, and just trampling over for some major damage, right? So yeah, the card is super sweet, especially if you like that style of gameplay. Next, we have Miri Weatherlight Duelist. I actually like this commander a lot. This is doing something a little bit different from the previous one. This is all about going wide, where the last card was about going tall and just trampling over. This is a card that benefits from you trying to play maybe a lot of small creatures, a lot of tokens, and there are some cards out of the package that do encourage that type of gameplay. However, if you want to go all in on that mechanic, you'll probably want to upgrade the deck and make some changes to it. Now, with that being said, what I like about her is she's cheap. She only costs 3. You can cast her early, you can cast her often. She's pretty formidable too with the first strike 3/2, but what's really cool is she lessens the blow early game from other faster decks that might be coming in to attack you, and it allows you to perhaps build out your army a little bit. Secondly, when it is time for you to get on the offensive, she can push across a lot of damage with that first ability. Each opponent can't block with more than 1 creature when she attacks. So if you're attacking in with a lot of different creatures, that can get pretty crazy pretty quick. So yeah, I think this is a super sweet commander option as well. Next, we have Nizan, Revered Blacksmith, and his ability focuses in on equipment. You're going to find that's a very strong sub-theme in this deck right out of the box. Again, you could bolster that sub-theme if you wanted to upgrade the deck and make this your commander, but even if you didn't, just played it right out of the box, there's a lot of great pieces of equipment and a lot of cards where equipment matters that you'll find in here, and we'll be going through those in just a moment. All right, let's look at some of the new creatures that are included. We'll start off with Alms Collector. This is a good card to disrupt opponents that are trying to do some crazy things with card draw. Now, simply, that could be sometimes just drawing a lot of cards, but it could also be things like storm effects, like Time Twister style effects that you find in cards like Time Spiral and such. It can really mess up those plans pretty quick. And because of that, it gets me wondering, do I want to try something like this, maybe even in Legacy out of a sideboard? I don't know. 4 is a little expensive. I'm not quite sold on it. I might want to try it just to kind of see how it plays. But when you consider it's good against some of those big sweeping card draw effects, but also good against the small things like Brainstorm, it's at least intriguing. Balin Wandering Knight. All right, here's a card that plays really well with equipment. First off, it's a nice creature on its own. A 3/3 first strike for 4 is always good. And if you get 2 pieces of equipment on it, it gets double strike. But maybe more impressively, for a 1 and a white, you get to attach all equipment you control to this. So that's a cheap way to maybe put some expensive equipment on a creature. Even if it's just 1 piece of expensive equipment, this can be quite economical. Really, really good card for commander purposes here. I like this a lot. Another card that gets me wondering, maybe a Zoo style deck that's playing with like Stoneforge Mystics or something like that in Legacy. Is that something I would want to maybe try this card in? I don't know. I'd at least want to attempt it and see what happens. Hungry Links. Talk about a 2/2 for 2 with plenty of upside. This is it, and it's a great political card too for Commander. What I like about this card is at each of your end steps, which includes the one you put it out, so it does something right away, you get to give away a 1/1 black rat creature token with death touch to one of your opponents. So you're giving your opponents the means to basically destroy each other's board state. But as long as you have Hungry Links and you can protect it, you don't have to worry about those rats really doing anything to you. And that's kind of cool. Now, it's not fast. I mean, it takes a while to start populating those rats out there. But once things start to happen, and maybe these rats start to die eventually, well, this card starts getting bigger. Not to mention all the other cats you control also start getting bigger with permanent +1/+1 counters in that case. So that's actually pretty sweet. And you can play this in a few different ways. You can just try to scorch the world by giving rats out to everyone, or maybe you form an alliance with a player, giving them the rat every time, and try to build at least an early alliance to take out someone else. A lot of fun. I love these political style cards. Qasali Slingers. This is cool. It feels like a harmonic sliver for cats, basically. It turns all your cats into vehicles to blow up artifacts and enchantments when they enter the battlefield. So there's always going to be plenty of targets, even if it's just mana rocks, right, in the game of Commander. So you're going to find things to do with this. And it's a nice 3/5 with reach as well. Sometimes green has trouble dealing with flyers, so this can help you protect against maybe a small flyer here or there. Next is Stalking Leonin, and I was kind of hoping we'd get like a cycle of this type of thing. Unfortunately, we didn't, but I really like the idea of secretly choosing an opponent and then having something happen. And this also could encourage people to maybe not attack you because they don't want to take the risk, which is always good too, especially when you're trying to build up in a tribal deck. So it's a really cool idea. I hope they do more with this type of thing in the future. All right, let's look at a new sorcery that is included, and that's Traverse the Outlands. Now, this is a really awesome way to ramp into something big, but here's the interesting part about this deck. This deck isn't necessarily about ramping into like large things, but it has a lot of ways to buffer your mana base. And I think the reason for that is because there's a lot of equipment in this deck, and they want you to be able to play your equipment and attach it quickly. There's some tricks that allow you to do that in the deck, but if you don't have those tricks, you're going to need the mana to do it so you don't fall behind. So it makes sense, but you're going to notice as we go through here, and I'll give you some more thoughts on this at the end of the video, it feels like sometimes it's overkill for what's actually in this deck. Also, too, I think there's a missed opportunity here with cards like this and landfall abilities. Landfall abilities on a few cards here or there actually would have been pretty sweet and could be a good upgrade choice for you, but we don't really get that. Like, imagine playing this in like an Omnith style deck or something like that. Could be really sweet. So another really good card that you could even strip out of here and maybe put in another Commander deck that's doing something completely different. All right, let's look at one new instant, and that's Kindred Summons. There's a whole cycle of these. We'll be looking at them throughout the week, but this particular one is an instant, and I find that very, very interesting, actually, for what this ability is. I mean, you can play this at the end step of your previous opponent and surprise your other players at the table by throwing out some potentially spicy targets, right? Now, it's high variance. You could hit a bunch of small things, and if that's the case, well, you still hit a bunch of small things. It doesn't feel like it would take that much for the 7 mana that you use to cast this to really come back, maybe even more so than the value you put into it, right? When you start picking up creatures off the top of your library. If you hit something big, awesome. But if you hit a bunch of small things too, it's actually still very good, right? Especially in this deck, and you can exploit that a little bit. So yeah, this card's really sweet, and it feels like some sort of like hyper collected company in some ways. But I really like it, and I think that this is a card that, again, you could strip out of here and put in any kind of tribal deck, and it would work really well. All right, let's look at some new enchantments. And there's a whole cycle of these, actually. 2 of them are included in this set. This is Curse of Bounty. Now, what's cool about these is I like the type of gameplay and type of interactions that they encourage. With this particular one, you have a lot of choices when it comes to casting it. You could play it on the player that maybe has the strongest board state, or you could play it on the player that maybe has the weakest board state, or you could even play it on yourself if you chose to. But here's what's cool about this cycle. Basically, when you put it on an opponent, or even on yourself, whenever anybody attacks that person, you get a benefit and they get the same benefit. So if you attack, just you get the benefit, of course, but if another opponent decides to do so, they're helping themselves and they're helping you as well, which leads to a lot of big decisions. If I'm the opponent, do I want to attack that person that has this curse on them? And if I do, maybe I get a benefit from it, but I'm also giving the benefit to this other player over here. Is that good for me? Is that bad for me? Also, just deciding where you play this card, there's a lot of decisions going into that. Like I said, you could put it on the person with the strongest board state to encourage people to whittle that down a little bit, or you could put it on the person with the weakest board state, because then you'll probably get more of the effect happening more often for you. Or you could even put it on yourself, like I said, in certain situations, and maybe that could be okay for you too. So yeah, it's actually really sweet. I like the fact that they made a series of curses that is this interactive for multiplayer. In this particular case, the green one is allowing the person who attacks and yourself, if it's not you, to untap all non-land permanents he or she controls. Curse of Vitality, well, here's the white one, kind of the same story as the previous card, but this time the benefit is gaining 2 life. Maybe not as exciting as some of the other ones, but it's just fine. New artifacts. You're going to see some interesting equipment here, and this is one of them, Bloodforged Battle Axe. Okay, this is cheap. It costs 1, 2 to equip, and if the combat damage gets through from the equipped creature, you get to make another one of these. So this could get out of hand kind of quick, and it's really, really cheap to pull off. I like this quite a bit, and there's another card we're going to see in a few moments that was reprinted that works really well with this card too. Fantastic, cheap piece of equipment, and again, another card I start thinking about maybe legacy possibilities in some sort of like zoo aggro deck or something like that. Could it be good enough there? I don't know. It might be a little slow, but I'd want to at least try it out. Hammer of Nizan. So we saw Nizan earlier, and one of the things that's cool about Nizan is when he comes into play, he allows you to search your library for an equipment card. Now, if you pick any other equipment card, it goes to your hand, but if you pick this one, it goes right into the battlefield attached to him. Now, what's cool about that is it really circumvents the whole fact that this thing costs 4 to cast and also 4 to equip. However, keep in mind, whenever this or another equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach equipment to target creature you control. So when you play this for 4, you don't actually have to pay that 4 equipment, or the 4 equip cost. Now, after it's out, yeah, you have to pay 4 to move it around, sure. But at least initially, you get past that. So that makes that 4 casting cost feel a little bit better. And again, if you cheat it into play with Nizan, well, more power to you. That's even greater. But I love just having this thing on the battlefield, regardless of what it does. And it's not bad giving something indestructible and +2/+0. But aside from just that even, all the equipment entering the battlefield gets to basically get equipped for free. That's actually really, really sweet as well. And again, makes me wonder about maybe some legacy potential. Heirloom Blade. This one's maybe not as exciting as some of the other ones. It's just fine. It costs 3, 1 to equip, and yeah, something gets +3/+1. When it dies, you get to go through the top of your library to hit a matching creature type. So again, works well in tribal, but it doesn't go like right into play or anything. It just goes to your hand. So you still have to cast it and such. It's fine. It helps the card that died kind of get replaced, which is kind of good when it comes to card count, but it's not going to do anything like really crazy. Herald's Horn. Now this one's another one I'm kind of impressed with. It only costs 3, and it's great for any sort of tribal build. Like, I feel like if you're going to play tribal commander in the future, you're going to want one of these, because there's no reason not to have one. When this enters the battlefield, you choose the creature type, and from that point forward, creature spells of that type are 1 less. But maybe more importantly, at the beginning of your upkeep, you get to look at the top card of your library, and if it's a creature card of that type, it goes to your hand. So sometimes it's some extra card draw, but all the time it allows you to cast those creatures cheaper, and that's actually kind of awesome. So I was thinking about this maybe in like Legacy Elves or something. The only thing I can't wrap my head around, though, is what do you take out? Because those decks are pretty tight, and you don't want to dilute your actual tribal creatures. You don't want to take out like your Ether Vials and stuff like that when you think like Merfolk, or you think Elves, or you think even Slivers. So is there room for this? Maybe not. But again, I might want to try it. All right, there's also a new land that you get, and that's Path of Ancestry. This is another one I really like. Basically, it's a command tower that comes into play taps, a little slower than your normal command tower, but you get a benefit out of that. And when that mana is spent that you take from this, on a creature spell that shares a creature type with your commander, you get to scry 1. So that means when you play your commander, as long as it's not one of the Planeswalker commanders, you get to scry 1, or any other creature that shares the type, and you use this mana, you get to scry 1. Over the course of the game, that starts to add up, and that can actually give you a nice little advantage, and is worth the slowdown you have initially when you put it out, I think. So again, this feels like another one of those lands that's just going to become simply a staple of Commander going forward, much like Command Tower was. All right, having seen the new cards, let's quickly round out the reprints. Now, I'm not going to spend as much time on these because we kind of know what these cards do already. They're already in existence, but I'll give you a few quick comments on them as we go through. First one is Fleece Mainline. I mean, great choice, obviously. If you've ever played with this was big back in the Standard days of Theros, and I actually played with it in Standard, and it was phenomenal there. It'll still be good for you in this deck. Jareth, Leonin Titan, nice defensive card here. Giselle Goldmane. Now here's an offensive card that complements that previous one. If you've ever played with this before, you know how good this can be. 4/4 first striker for 4 is kind of nice on its own, but that ability really sets this card apart. 2 white and 3 attacking creatures you control get +X/+X till end of turn, where X is the number of attacking creatures. That can get pretty crazy in a go wide deck. So this is one of the cards that we see that is starting to encourage the go wide play a little bit. There's not that many. I wish there was more out of the package, but again, you can always upgrade. Janet Ogenin of Afavra. All right, I spit that out. This is a really fun card from Planar Chaos. If you remember it back in those days, that's a while back now. It has Forest Walk, so you know we're going back a little bit. But also, this is another card that encourages the go wide play with 2/2 green Cat Warrior tokens that are created every time this attacks or blocks, and those also have Forest Walk. Kemba Kar Regent, really nice inclusion here. I was alluding to this a little bit earlier, but that axe that duplicates itself, this card is perfect with that card, but just really good with any equipment-based strategy. Leonin Arbiter. This is actually a really nice pickup. This is like a $5-6 card. It sees a lot of sideboard play, sometimes in Modern and Legacy. It shows up in the variants of the Taxes decks, actually in both formats. Sometimes it shows up in Company decks. But regardless, as far as Commander goes, maybe it's not as good here. It's fine. It doesn't have flash, so it can't surprise anybody. Yes, it's meant to disrupt some of those like tutor effects or even fetch land effects and such. But when your opponent sees it coming and they can pay the 2 to get around it, that's usually not too big of a deal in the world of Commander. It's probably a better card for like Modern or Legacy than it is for Commander, but it's kind of nice that they gave you the reprint, and we finally got a chance to see this reprinted. Maybe it'll bring the price down a little bit. Leonin Relic Warder. Not too much to say about this one. It's basically like an Oblivion Ring effect for an artifact or enchantment. Leonin Shikari. This is another card that was not cheap, actually. This will run you a few dollars if you want to pick it up on the secondary market. So again, it's a really nice reprint here, which should bring the value of this card down a little bit, make it more affordable for some. Not that it was super expensive. I think it was like a $6 card or something. But for the most part, just being able to activate your equip abilities at instant speed is really, really sweet. And you can do that for just 2 mana and a 2/2. That's awesome economy. Horeskos Explorer, another card that's trying to let you dig some lands out. Again, it makes me say, where's the landfall abilities in this deck? Phantom Nishova, this can actually be a pretty nice beater too for 7 at times, although it can be a little squishy with that ability. Gwasali Pride Mage, another card that has seen some modern sideboard play in the past. Great if you need to deal with a problematic artifact or enchantment too. Raksha Golden Cub. Now, this is like the original Cat Lord back in the day. Like, we have the new Cat Lord for Mom and Cat, and that one's just fine. But this one, even though it's a little expensive at 7, this thing is not messing around. You know, you do have to get it equipped with something, but once you do, all cats getting +2/+2 and double strike. This one even already has Vigilance on top of that. That can be super sweet at the right time. Set's Tiger. This was originally from Future Sight, another card that has never been reprinted before, and this is the first time printed in the normal Magic border. It was in the special Future Sight border in Future Sight. But the art's also new, looks really, really sweet. Nice utility card. Spirit of the Hearth. Well, here's a cat with flying. You don't see that every day. So a cat spirit is kind of a nice inclusion here. Helps you have something in the air at least. Sun Spirit Shikari, actually another fine card for equipment-based strategies. Tajnar Swordsmith, again, great with equipment-based strategy. Temur Sabertooth. This is here to help you deal with a board sweep, and actually all these decks coming out of the box have different varieties of board sweeps in them. You're going to see one, or actually a couple in this deck in a few moments. So they do exist out there, even if you're playing just flat out from the box to the kitchen table. And it's nice to have a defense against them, and that's basically what this is. Now, yeah, you have to have the mana open to do it, but you can bounce some of your stuff back, and when you do, this becomes indestructible, which is kind of nice too. Alright, let's look at the sorceries. You get a Cultivate, just again helps you ramp out a little bit faster. Divine Reckoning. This is one of your board sweeps, and this one's fine. Only costs 4. Now everyone gets to keep their best thing, which might be good for you sometimes, might not be good for you sometimes. But this also has flashback, so for the price of this card, it feels pretty economical. Harmonize. Great card draw spell in green. This is a color-shifted version of Concentrate. We originally saw it in Planar Chaos, and it's been a staple, really, ever since these supplemental products. Hunter's Prowess. Can't surprise anyone with this one, but sometimes that just doesn't matter. It's going to get damage across, and maybe more importantly, get you some card draw. This is Pilgrimage, another way to search for more lands. Route. Here's another good board sweep. It's funny, when this originally came out, it was kind of like, oh, this is good, but it's not Wrath of God. I have to pay 5 for this. Well, now we live in a world where you don't pay 4 for these type of spells anymore, at least not typically, unless they have some pretty big drawbacks attached to them. So we're used to paying 5 for a board sweep, and this one is a 5 board sweep with upside. Now, you can pay an extra 2 and actually play this at instant speed, which is pretty sweet. Route is actually a great inclusion. Soul's Majesty, another way to draw some cards. And we'll look at some instants. You get Condemn, good removal. Crushing Vines, way to deal with a flyer or an artifact. Relic Crush, great way to deal with artifacts and enchantments. White Sun Zenith, another card that promotes the go wide strategy. Wing Shards. Very interesting card. This is a Storm card. Maybe not the Storm card Storm players like to use, but it has Storm. And it defends you against some attacking creatures, and it's a sacrifice effect. So that's very interesting when it comes to dealing with things that are maybe indestructible or something like that. Enchantments. We got a few to look at. Abundance. I actually used to play with this card. It can be pretty good. If you really need land, you're desperate for land, I mean, this is a way to pretty much guarantee you're going to get the land off your draw. So I like the card. It's not anything super exciting, especially at 4, but it's fine. Mirari's Wake. All right, now this is a card that is an awesome reprint. This was last reprinted in the first Conspiracy, so it's been a while. And the card's going to run you like $13 typically. It'll probably go down a little bit now that this is being reprinted, of course. But this card's awesome. Fantastic cube card. Great in this deck, giving everything the +1/+1, and also that Mana Flare ability is awesome. Zendikar Resurgent, another Mana Flare ability. This one also a card draw ability, though, and that's actually pretty sweet. That card draw ability is really probably the reason I'm playing this in this particular deck. It starts to feel like a little bit of overkill with all of these ramp spells. You kind of want them because you want to be able to use your equipment efficiently, but I feel like they've given you a lot of them in this particular deck. And again, if you do want to upgrade, you have a couple options here. You might be able to take some of them out and put some other things that are more offensive in, or you could take some other stuff out and put some bigger things in, because you certainly could cast some big things in this deck. All right, let's move on to some artifacts. We'll start with Agentum Armor, and this costs 6 to cast, 6 to equip. It's not cheap, although we know there's some ways around that equip cost. And giving something +6/+6 is sweet, but that ability, though, whenever equipped creature attacks, destroy target permanent. Not non-land permanent, mind you, but target permanent. Behemoth Sledge. Fine card. Always reminded me of like a fixed Loxodon Warhammer. Dreamstone Hedron, another way to ramp or draw cards, which is actually probably what you'll be doing with this more so. Grappling Hook, another fine piece of equipment, not necessarily cheap, but costs 4 to equip, gives something double strike, and also can force some blocks. Hedron Archive, yes, another ramp spell, but again, another card draw spell too. Hero's Blade. I love this card in Commander. You throw your commander out in the battlefield. If this is out there, it just equips instantly with that +3/+2. Great inclusion here. Lightning Greaves, another classic staple now of the Commander format. This card is awesome, and you'll find it all the time. You may already have a copy or two of this lying around, but it's a nice inclusion, especially for new players. Loxodon Warhammer. I mentioned this earlier, but another really good piece of old school equipment. Quite a Spike. This one's interesting. Like, you put this on a creature. Again, it's not the cheapest thing with 3 and 3 to equip, but it gives the creature death touch, and it's really going to encourage your opponent to do some chump blocking to perhaps not take that hit. Skull Clamp, great card. I mean, Skull Clamp's amazing. It might not be as great in this particular deck. It can't really be exploited like you'd exploit it maybe in some token strategies and such, but it's still good. I'm glad they included it. Soul Ring, best mana rock ever printed, and they include this in these products every year, but the cards are still like $3-4 cards, so it's kind of good that they keep reprinting them. The demand for these is incredibly strong. Basically, Commander players usually want one of these in almost all their decks, so it's nice that they keep putting them out there, especially for new players. Staff of Nin, another nice card draw spell. That point of damage sometimes is relevant, but the card draw is great. Swiftfoot Boots. This is kind of like the updated version of Lightning Greaves. It's not as good. The equip cost is 1 instead of 0. It has hexproof instead of the Shroud ability, though, so it's a little different, and it's still good. Sword of the Animist. This is a nice inclusion, and again, it's allowing you to go after your basic lands, and again, makes me say, where's the landfall abilities? But this is a card that has been noticed by commanders that play landfall decks or just want to ramp out with different, maybe multicolor, 5-color commander decks or something like that. And as a matter of fact, this was the most expensive rare in Magic Origins at the time that it's being reprinted. Not counting mythic rares, but just rares. And that really speaks to something. People have been paying attention to this card. Not that it was super expensive, it's just really a few dollars. But still, it's kind of nice that they reprinted it before it got more expensive. Sword of Vengeance, another fine option for equipment. All right, let's move on to some basic lands. A lot of these are color fixing, but we'll begin with Blighted Woodland, another card that makes me say, where's the landfall abilities? Blossoming Sands. Command Tower, of course, great staple, glad it's included. Elfim Palace. Evolving Wilds. Grasslands, one of the original fetch lands back when they came into play tapped. Greypelt Refuge. Krosan Verge, another variant on the fetch land. Mosswort Bridge. I like the hideaway lands a lot. Whenever they have a chance to print them in these supplemental products, I'm all for it. Marriott Landscape. Again, a lot of cards that would enable landfall in here. Opal Palace, another staple land for Commander now. Rogue's Passage. Nice card to include. Sometimes you can sneak out a win with this. Salt Crusted Steppe, one of the battery lands. Secluded Steppe, cycling land. Selesnya Guildgate. Selesnya Sanctuary. Stirring Wildwood. I always like to see the creature lands reprinted too. Whenever they have an opportunity, it's nice to see them show up in one of these products. Temple of the False God. Terramorphic Expanse. Tranquil Expanse. Tranquil Thicket, another cycling land. Vivid Grove. And finally, Vivid Meadow. Now, you get some basic lands. It's kind of interesting. They're using the same basic lands as the previous year's Commander product, but I'm not sad about that because they are beautiful. You get the cycle of Rebecca Gway lands, the cycle of Mark Poole lands, and the cycle of Kev Walker lands. So you will get 7 plains in this particular deck, and you'll get 6 forests. Now, for my thoughts on the deck, I think your first question is, which tribe do you like? If you're a fan of cats, you're going to love this deck, right? And the same is true of dragons, wizards, or vampires. If you like those tribes, that's probably going to be the deck that you pick. Now, the other thing to consider, though, about this particular deck is equipment. If you like that equipment sub-theme, well, this might be the deck for you then. Or the other thing to think about is upgrade possibilities, right? There's a few ways you could go with this deck. I mean, you could go bigger. You could put bigger things in here if you like that kind of gameplay style. You could go wide and use Miri as your commander. There's some elements already there, but you could bolster that quite a bit. That's probably the one theme that is most lacking in this out of the box. Or you could go deeper with the equipment theme, which is actually pretty stable, I think, but could be a lot better with some upgrades to the equipment and maybe some of the other cards that enhance equipment. So there's a lot of ways you could go. Even landfall, I mentioned that a few times. You could take some of these landfall style cards, you could even strip them out of here and build another deck with them, or you could simply put some landfall matters cards into this deck and just kind of play off that theme a little bit. So there's a lot of directions you could go. I really like this out of the box, though. I think personally this might be my favorite just because I feel like out of all of the different tribes out there, Cats definitely benefited a lot by having all these additional cards added to that tribe. Wizards is similar maybe, but I do feel like Dragons had a lot of support before, right? Even Vampires had a fair amount of support before. I like the additions they're getting, but there's something special about this one because Cats, even though we saw a lot of them in the Amonkhet block, it does feel like the Cat tribe is something they could expand on, and this product does that. So I actually think that's pretty sweet. So I hope that helps you make some decisions. We'll be talking about these cards a lot, I'm sure, in future videos going forward as well. But hey, that's what we got for today. Now tomorrow we'll be back with another installment in this series, and we'll also do our weekly finance video as well and kind of look at what's going on in the market in the wake of these previews this week. So until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.